actually talk about the sexual abuse of children. And as you've already alluded to, it wasn't uncommon for Romans could sleep with anybody, children especially. Describe that for a bit. Why, and what did Christianity do to help change that?
So pederasty was absolutely celebrated in the ancient world. Greek and Roman authors would write odes about what a wonderful thing it was for older men to initiate children into the ways of sex and sexuality, and especially boys. And it was called pederasty, and that's a word that means child love. Now, Jews and Christians were always opposed to the practice, and they called it by a different name. They called it paidophoria, which means child destruction. So what the ancient world celebrated as love, Christians and Jews saw as abuse, and they named it as abuse. And it was when there were Christian emperors that suddenly even slaves could prosecute their owners for sexual violations, and there was like a statute of limitations that didn't run out for like decades and decades. It was incredibly progressive kind of legislation that came in to protect slaves, women, and children from these elite men who had always thought that they just had the right to possess whatever bodies that they had. And so what's interesting is that, you know, almost the taboo in sex nowadays is pedophilia. It's in prison populations, you know, the lowest rung of the ladder are the pedophiles. And we still have this sense that pedophilia is the worst kind of crime. But again, it was absolutely Christian developments in history that have taught us that children are not sexual objects, and that male sexuality in particular absolutely must be restrained, and that consent is an absolutely vital component to sexual relationships. We live in a society now where consent is the only value brought to bear when it comes to sex. But modern society can thank Christians that consent is there at all.